Tell me the origin story of Zweig Group. What was your original business model in the early days?
The original model was basically the model that's still followed today. Our genesis was as a consulting firm, and we had a pretty limited number of offerings, including business planning, executive search, retained HR related stuff, and maybe some marketing related consulting. And it was aimed at the architecture and engineering industry, which is a large fragmented industry made up of 100,000 plus companies, average one with 15 employees or so. Although our target client base was typically, firms with, let's say, between 100 and maybe 2 or 3,000 employees. That was sort of the sweet spot. The smaller ones thought they couldn't afford us, and the bigger ones thought they could do it all on their own. But that's how it really started. And it morphed from that into other services and certain products.
Tell me more about that. What products did you have?
Well, the first product that we offered, we had a free newsletter that went out to initially 250 people in my Rolodex. I had a non-compete for subscription-based newsletters, so I couldn't charge for it. That went out monthly, and over a period of 3 years, that grew to about 2,300 subscribers. And then we turned that into a paid vehicle. It immediately got 500 subscribers at a couple $100 a year. And eventually that became a 7-figure business in itself, the newsletter. But that was sort of the first product, although that was free. The first product we sold was a research report that we did on the principles of these companies, the owners. And we surveyed everything. There were a lot of financial surveys out in our industry, and there were salary surveys. We just aimed at the owners, and we found out everything about them, down to what their political orientation was, how many times they'd been married, what kind of vehicle they drove, what color it was, how big their office was. I mean, we got into lots of detail, and we sold that. We put that in a book, and we sold it. Today, the company has probably 20 or so of those. So the research is a big part of what they do. And they have other online research platforms, stuff. Then we started doing.
So you had this focused on architectural and engineering firms where you were helping them in the early days with consulting, business planning, executive search, and marketing. What prompted you to productize?
Well, everything. Who doesn't like getting MasterCard, Visa, and Amex deposits while you sleep? So having some kind of revenue that wasn't tied directly to an immediate effort or time expenditure is always nice. But the other thing was that for us, it really gave us the perfect business model in that we spent all of our marketing dollars on the products. And again, that expanded to books, magazines, seminars, whatever. But so historically, after the company hit a certain level of maturity, it was, roughly 60%, 65% consulting and 35 to 40 products. And it's still true today, which is really amazing. After all the years the company's been in business. But so by promoting the products, and initially it was with direct mail, and we budgeted 40% of the product revenue on direct mail. And by spending that 40%, it drove the sales of the products, and then it made the phone ring with consulting opportunities.
So in that way, they kind of fed one another in a sort of symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely. I always felt we had better products than just people who made products and didn't do consulting. And at the same time, our consulting benefited from the research and all the interaction that you had with clients to put a weekly newsletter together. And I mean, you can imagine, I mean, it was just a constant source of information flowing. It was unique information that other people didn't have.
I can also imagine there being conflicts, potential friction between the two businesses at times. I'm thinking, the temptation to preference consulting clients in the book, give the big booth space at the event to the highest paying consulting client. Like, how did you handle those inherent, conflicts of two very different business models that would arise, I would think, daily?
There really wasn't that much conflict. The biggest conflict was with executive search. The fact that you had a lot of information on your audience and then you could potentially be recruiting from them. That was probably the biggest source of conflict. The way we handled that is we really made a distinction between a client and a customer. We never recruited from a client, but I'm not going to say if you bought a $39 book from us that we might not, or your firm did, that we might not try to recruit somebody in your firm. That was one way we dealt with it. I think the other way was we really were very selective about the clients we worked for. We had really big relationships. Like our biggest relationship paid us about $1.4 million a year. And so, it sort of kept things manageable in a way because we weren't working for everybody. But that was the biggest conflict. I guess the other conflict, never really had issues about giving favoritism to clients or whatever, because if we wanted to do that, we could do that. I mean, there's nothing stopping us. But the other issue that later on led to some problems for the company after we sold it the first time to private equity, the consultants are the ones who do the seminars. They're the primary deliverers, speakers. They put everybody on a separate incentive plan. So then the consultants didn't want to use their time to make money for the seminar people, or the seminar people didn't want to have their P&Ls impacted by use of the consultants. And that created some problems. I mean, that was just a small part of why they really plummeted after we sold them. When we owned the company, we had no special P&Ls for any unit. Everybody was treated the same, and we had one company bonus program, and that's what everybody participated in, period.
I'm glad you brought up the sale because I want to go there next. So how big did you get this company before you sold it to private equity? Like in terms of revenue, where were you guys at?